Roots. There's a lot to talk about when you talk about the roots. I mean, if you think about any topic when it comes to Japanese maples, it can pretty much be drawn back to the roots. I mean, if you think about it, someone could even go far as to say, well, for instance, someone could say, oh, well, this tree isn't as heat tolerant as the other ones. Well, that could be a root system. You could have a poor root system on your graft, and you may have a tree that if you put it on a better root system, might perform better in that heat. Someone says, oh, my dog ran over this tree and broke it. Well, if that tree might have had a better root system, the tree might have been big enough that the dog would have seen it. So there's a lot to be said about roots, but I sort of broke it down into a couple different categories. We've got water, proper nutrients, fungus, pest prevention, airflow, and the best soil. And when you start with water, people always wonder how much water should actually be done to create the best amount of root flow. And it's hard to say because, one, that depends on your soil media, depends on how much, how porous your media is, depends on how much it flows through, and how much, what the climate is in the area that you're at. So it's really important that you figure out what is the proper amount of water to water your plants in a given area with your given soil media. And the easiest way to do this is simply the finger test. I mean, it's as simple as what mothers do to their babies to check and see, check the diaper, finger test. But as simple as sticking your finger, sticking it in the pot, and seeing if there's moisture down there. If it's dry, you need to water. A lot of nurseries have started to take technology and work into this more, where you literally take moisture sensors and you put moisture sensor down in the pot. It goes to a banking system where all that information is stored, and then eventually, say after one growing season, you can tell, well, this one was watered this way, this one was watered this rate, this one was watered at this rate, this one was watered at this rate, and this one here performed the best. And so they're actually now going in, measuring with moisture sensors to figure out exactly what is the proper amount to water. That may be a little bit complicated for some people, but really the easiest way is to go out and check and see whether or not there's actually moisture in the pot. Sometimes people get into the habit of going out and watering the containers without ever checking. And if your trees are already soaked, it's not going to help the roots to water them again. In fact, you maybe start inducing some phytophthora or some root rot if you continue to water plants when it's unnecessary. And whenever the roots are stressed a little bit, they start to search for water. So you do want it to be dry sometimes so that the tree itself will actually grow some more roots. And one other thing that I didn't talk about too, there is a lot to be said about trimming trees, because trimming trees it does almost revitalize the roots and make them become more active. When you trim on a roots, a lot of times it will emphasize growth in the roots, and then you'll get growth to the top of the plant as well. So that's one aspect that I didn't put on here that I wanted to cover, because Coach was going to cover it tomorrow, but I believe we're passing on that now. But when you trim on the tree, you really promote that healthy root system. If you don't trim on the tree, a lot of times the roots, there's no reason for them to grow if the plant's really putting on small amounts of growth. So you trim on the tree, promotes healthy roots, promotes a healthy top. And you can really see it in a lot of old arboretums that don't really trim on their trees much, because those trees start to become not healthy anymore because they haven't been trimmed on. So the trees have been in the ground for 50 years already. You start seeing a lot of real twiggy growth, and then eventually you start seeing disease and pests really start to eat on those plants. Proper nutrients is an essential part of Japanese maples. In fact, a lot of people don't realize how much of it is, because how much of an issue it is. We put our Japanese maples, like most plants, we put them directly into a soilless medium. It's pine bark. They're not really made, pine bark's not what they're actually growing in out in the wild or out in the ground when you're growing them out here. And we forget that the nutrients aren't actually in the pine bark. If we add nutrients to these, we'll promote a healthy root system. And there's actually 28 essential micronutrients. And sometimes if you use, say, Osmocote, or you use NutriCoat, some nutrients will be in those fertilizers, but not all of them. So sometimes you'll get a lack of one type of nutrient. And if you had all the nutrients, your plants will perform, make a better root system, and make a healthier plant. It's all about creating a healthy root system to create a healthy plant. Because like I said earlier, almost every aspect of when you're dealing with Japanese maples deals with a healthy root system. If you create the beginning stages for a healthy plant is always at the roots. And that's kind of ironic. But with the proper nutrients, you can actually add proper nutrients to your media. There's lots of different ways you can do this. One of them's a thing called Micromax. You can take it, read on the directions. It adds a lot of them. Another way you can do this if you don't want to go out and buy one specific thing is instead of going out there and fertilizing with your Osmocote like you've always done, how about you go out and say, this time I'm going to go out and I'm going to fertilize with fish emulsion. This time I'm going to go out and I'm going to fertilize with Miracle Water. If you change it up a lot of times you're covering a broader spectrum of the micronutrients, and you'll start to see better results from your plants because you're not feeding them just one micronutrient. You're starting to broaden the spectrum. Now, lime is something that's, I was preached to that this is an essential part that most plants are actually lacking in is lime. We have a perfect pH of 7.0, so we don't think to add lime because people think of lime as changing the pH. But small amounts of lime are good for most plants because what it does is it adds calcium. Calcium is essential in the roots of a healthy plant. And the lime itself, at small amounts, that's what lime is it helps the plants take up the calcium. So one thing that to create a healthy root system we might actually need to be doing more of is adding lime to our containers in small amounts. And this actually came to me from Ted Stevens of Nurseries Care, Indiana, who is, I would consider, one of the foremost experts in plants in the United States. And I already talked about the different types of fertilizers. Now the next one is kind of funny. Are there fungus among us? The bad guys and the good guys. The bad guys, obviously Pseudomonas. Pseudomonas is when you see that blackening in the bark that'll turn to a brownish. Sometimes it'll be on the solid part of the plant. Sometimes it'll be closer towards the tip. Sometimes it'll be on the trunk. The next one is verticillium. Now there's both verticillium aboetrum, which you'll see is twig dieback on plants. So you're constantly, every year you'll see twig dieback on plants no matter how well they're doing. That's verticillium aboetrum. There's also quick die verticillium, which is, you'll see a plant die from the top down almost instantaneously and within a week or two. That's quick die verticillium. Now, you see these spots on the upper part of the tree in black. You see these going down from the top of the tree. You think that these are actually caught by the trees from the top of the tree? They're not. They're all root issues. A healthy root system helps fight these guys off. It helps prevent Japanese maples from catching these in the first place. So if we focus on creating a healthy root system, we can help prevent these bad guy funguses. Phytophthora is another one, but Phytophthora is actually root rot. And root rot is generally gotten by high temperatures and too much water. So if you can focus on creating that healthy root system, the right amount of watering, then you can help avoid Phytophthora. The good guys are endomycorrhiza. Now what endomycorrhiza does is it goes in, it attaches itself to the roots, and helps with nutrient uptake, and really helps create healthy root system, and a very strong tree. Now, people have heard of mycorrhiza before, but it's essential to make sure that it's endomycorrhiza versus ecto. Ectomycorrhiza works for pines, works for a lot of annuals, works for a lot of other plants. But endo is the only type of mycorrhiza that works on Japanese maples and maples. It's the type of mycorrhiza that's been proven to really have a good effect. So if you go to a store and you see, oh, this has endomycorrhiza and ectomycorrhiza, I would go and I'd say to the person who's running the store, I want just ecto. And see if they can't order you just ecto. Because there's no reason to pay for the endo. You want the endo. There's no reason to pay for the ecto if the only thing that's going to work for you is the endo. There's no reason to pay for the ecto. Because all that ecto is going to do is it's going to go and find some weed or something to attach roots to. And, but really what will happen is you can see a true difference between the plants that you put on the endomycorrhiza and the ecto. And I can talk this whole time on mycorrhiza. I mean, it takes 6 weeks to colonize, so you can't fertilize for the first 6 weeks after you put it on your plants. It's best to put it in about now, or earlier, because you don't want to have heat spikes. If you have the heat spikes, you kill off the mycorrhiza in the plants. You know, your plants never want to be above 115, or your mycorrhiza. Well, neither do your Japanese maples. You don't want to get them too hot. So it works great for containers. You'll really create a healthy root system by adding in some endomycorrhiza to your plants. It'll really help benefit creating a healthy root system, and it'll help whenever you're watering and whenever you're adding those other micronutrients, that plant to really take it up and absorb it. So the more micronutrients and the better it can uptake the water, the better your tree is going to be from the get-go. Now, pest prevention. The number one issue with Japanese maples with pests, when it comes to roots, is your Japanese beetle grub. You know, this can easily be taken care of by going and getting the little tablets that you put in your soil if you've got them in a container that kill the grubs. Japanese maple beetle grubs generally don't attack Japanese maples in the landscape as much because they'd rather go eat on grass or something else, and there's so much else to eat on. But if they're in a container, it's the only thing they've got to eat on, as I'm sure y'all know. And that's really your main issue is your pests. So as long as you can make sure that you treat your Japanese maples that are in containers, you can avoid having any issues with pests really going and attacking the root system. Pests also sort of include the fungus too, because Pseudomonas is a bacteria, and so is Verticillium that attack the plants.